Come on now. Settle yourself down. Pull that blanket up just a little higher, right up to your chin, and let your head sink soft and heavy into your pillow. That's it. Take one long, slow breath in and let it out again. Good. Tonight, before you drift away to sleep, I'm going to tell you something wonderful. Something so quiet and so far away that you'll have to listen very gently to hear it. Because tonight, we're going to float up, 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 up. All the way past the clouds and past the blue sky and past everywhere you've ever been, all the way up to a little house that floats in space. And don't worry. We're just going to look. We're just going to drift quietly alongside it, peering in through the windows at the astronauts inside, watching them go about their gentle, quiet day. You don't need to do anything. You can keep your eyes closed. Just listen. Now, imagine you're looking up at the night sky. You've done that before, haven't you? Lying on your back, staring up at all those little dots of light, so many that you can never quite count them all before your eyes start to blur and close. And sometimes, if you look very carefully, and you're very patient, you might see one of those little lights moving. Not a blinking aeroplane light, but a steady, soft, slowly moving dot, sailing quietly across the whole sky in about 5 minutes. That's it. That's the International Space Station. And inside that little moving light, right now, there are astronauts, real people. Eating their dinner, or looking out of their windows, or perhaps just floating quietly, getting ready for sleep. Just like you. The International Space Station. People sometimes just call it the ISS, because the full name is quite a lot to say, has been floating up there for a very long time. It was built piece by piece, like the most complicated puzzle you've ever seen. Except, the puzzle pieces were enormous, and they were put together all the way up in space. It took many, many years to build, and many different countries helped to make it, because it belongs to everyone on Earth, really. To you, and to me, and to everyone. And right now, tonight, while you're lying in your warm bed, about 6 astronauts are living up there, just floating around, going about their day. Isn't that a gentle sort of thing to think about? Now, the first thing you notice when you're an astronaut on the International Space Station, the very first thing, the thing that never quite stops being magical, is that you float. Everything floats. You float. Your pencil floats. Your cup floats. If you let go of your sandwich floats. If you sneeze, well, the sneeze sort of floats too, which is why astronauts have to be very careful about that. This floating happens because the station is so high up and it's moving so fast. Oh, it moves terribly fast, much faster than any airplane, faster even than a shooting star. That it's always falling, just a little bit, curving around the Earth like a ball rolling around the inside of a very large bowl. And when you're falling like that, you don't feel heavy anymore. You feel like nothing at all. Weightless, they call it, like being underwater but without the wet. Can you imagine that? Just drifting from one room to the next without walking? Your feet lifting off the floor, your hair floating up above your head, your arms spreading out to their sides like a slow, lazy bird. Some astronauts say that when they first arrive at the station and float through the hatch for the very first time, they feel like they've become something entirely new. Like they've been a caterpillar their whole life, and now, suddenly, they're a butterfly. Of course, it takes a little bit of getting used to. In the beginning, the floating can make your tummy feel a bit wobbly, and your head feels a little stuffy. Because without gravity pulling all your blood down towards your feet, it sort of drifts up towards your head instead, which makes your face look a tiny bit rounder and puffier. The astronauts say it feels like having a very mild cold that never quite goes away. But then, after a few days, your body adjusts, and the floating just feels normal. Lovely and normal. The station itself is quite big. As big as a football pitch if you could unroll it and lay it flat. It's made of long tubes joined together, and it hums and whirs very quietly all the time because it has to keep the air fresh and the temperature just right and all the water flowing. It's like a very busy, very quiet building that never stops working. The sound, the astronauts say, is a bit like being inside a very large refrigerator or inside a submarine. A gentle, constant hum. Some astronauts say it takes a little while to fall asleep with all that humming at first, but after a while it becomes the most comforting sound in the world. Because it means everything is working. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is steady. During the day, the station drifts through the light and shadow of space, and because it moves so quickly, it travels all the way around the whole Earth in just 90 minutes, which is about as long as a film. The astronauts see the sun rise and set 16 times every single day. 16 sunrises. 16 sunsets. One every hour and a half. Can you imagine? You'd barely have time to say good morning before it was time to say good evening. Again. Of course, the astronauts don't follow all those sunrises and sunsets. That would make for a very confusing day. Instead, they keep to one big clock, the same clock that people in a city called Houston in America are following. That way, they know when to work and when to sleep, and things stay nice and orderly. Now, sleeping on the space station is one of those things that sounds so strange that you have to hear it a few times before it sinks in. There's no lying down exactly, because there's no up and no down. You could sleep on the ceiling if you wanted to, and it would feel exactly the same as sleeping on the floor. In fact, it would feel exactly the same as sleeping in the middle of the room, floating like a ghost. What astronauts do is they have their own little sleep pod. A small, private, quiet little space about the size of a very snug cupboard. And inside it, there's a sleeping bag. But this sleeping bag is attached to the wall. So when they climb into it and zip themselves up, they stay put instead of drifting around and bumping into things in their sleep. Some astronauts sleep with their arms inside the sleeping bag, tucked down by their sides. Others sleep with their arms floating out in front of them. Because in weightlessness, if your arms aren't tucked in, they just drift up on their own until you look like a sleepwalking zombie, which the other astronauts find quite funny in the morning. Inside the sleep pod, it's dark and quiet. Or as quiet as anything gets on the station, which means there's still that gentle, steady hum. And astronauts say that it's actually one of the best sleeps of their lives, floating there in their sleeping bag, weightless, with nothing pressing down on any part of their body, like sleeping on absolutely nothing at all. Drift and float and hum. When it's time to wake up, the station plays music. Every morning, someone on the ground chooses a song and plays it up to the astronauts to start their day. Sometimes it's something lively and cheerful. Sometimes it's something sweet and slow. The astronauts and their families and friends sometimes get to choose the song. Imagine having someone play you a special song every single morning, all the way from Earth, floating up through all that silence and space, just for you. After waking up, the astronauts have to get dressed, which sounds simple, but is actually a little bit funny. When there's no gravity, putting on trousers can mean accidentally spinning slowly in a circle while one leg is still in the air. It takes a bit of practice and a good sense of humor. Then comes breakfast, which is its own lovely adventure. Food on the space station comes in pouches and packets because a plate wouldn't be any use at all. If you put scrambled eggs on a plate and left them for 1 second, they'd drift off and float around and end up in somebody's ear. So everything is either squeezed from a tube or eaten straight from a sealed pouch with a little spoon. The astronauts have to eat quite carefully and quite slowly, making sure not to let any crumbs escape, because in zero gravity, A crumb doesn't fall to the floor and get swept up later. A crumb just floats. And floats and floats, drifting through the air and into ventilation fans and into people's eyes and into all sorts of places where crumbs absolutely should not be. So there are no biscuits on the space station for exactly this reason. Isn't that funny? All the power and wonder of human science and engineering, and still no biscuits. Because of crumbs. Some foods work quite well in space. Tortillas are very popular because they're flat and soft and don't make crumbs. Nuts are good. Fruit. Peanut butter, which you can squeeze onto a tortilla and roll up into a lovely little space burrito. Some foods come pre-cooked and sealed in pouches, and astronauts add a little water and then eat them straight from the pouch. Things like macaroni and cheese, or soup, or scrambled eggs, or even a little birthday cake if someone is celebrating. Because, yes, birthdays happen on the space station, just like everywhere else. And someone always makes sure there's something a little special to eat. Water on the space station is even more interesting than the food. There isn't very much of it to spare because it has to be brought up from Earth on supply rockets, and rockets are expensive and can only carry so much. So the astronauts recycle their water very carefully. They collect water from the air, just the moisture from people breathing and sweating. And they clean it and filter it until it's fresh and pure and perfectly good to drink. They also recycle something else. Now, I'll tell you this very gently, because it is a little bit funny. The water that the astronauts drink is also made from, well, from their own wee. I know. Take a moment. But the filtration system on the space station is so incredibly clever, so thorough, and so careful that by the time the water has been cleaned and filtered and tested, it is actually purer than most tap water you'd drink at home. The scientists who designed it say it is perfectly safe and perfectly lovely. The astronauts say you really can't tell any difference at all. Still, isn't that something to think about? The astronauts say that the easiest way to think about it is this. All the water on Earth has been through everything and everyone at some point over millions and millions of years. The water you drink tonight was once part of a cloud, and before that part of a river, and before that part of an ancient sea that dinosaurs swam in. Water just keeps going around and around. And on the space station, it just goes around a little faster and a little more directly. When you think about it like that, it sounds rather elegant. After breakfast, the astronauts go to work. And the work they do up there is extraordinary, even though they do it very quietly and very carefully, like scientists in any laboratory anywhere on Earth. They run experiments, hundreds of experiments. Thousands over the years the station has been running. Because space is a wonderful place to find out things that you simply can't find out on Earth. Without gravity, crystals grow differently. Flames burn differently. They go perfectly spherical, like tiny glowing balls, instead of teardrop-shaped, like the flame on a candle. Blood and fluids behave differently in the body. Plants grow differently in the body. Plants grow differently. Even the way metals mix together can be different up there in weightlessness. Scientists on Earth write all these experiments very carefully, and then the astronauts become the scientists' hands up in space, carrying out the work, taking careful notes, photographing everything, sending the results back home. Some of the experiments are about the astronauts themselves. Because the human body was built for gravity, for being heavy, for pushing against the ground, for everything pulling downwards. And when you take the body away from all of that, it starts to change in interesting ways. The bones start to get a little thinner and lighter, because they don't need to be as strong when there's nothing to push against. The muscles soften and grow weaker. The heart, which normally pushes blood uphill against gravity, starts to ease off a little. This is why the astronauts exercise for 2 hours every single day without fail. There are special machines strapped to the walls of the station. Treadmills and bicycles. And the astronauts strap themselves in and run and pedal, bouncing very gently up and down in slow motion. From outside, through a porthole, they look like very serene, very slow athletes floating in place, working hard but going nowhere, while the whole Earth spins below them. There's a part of the International Space Station called the cupola, and it might be the most beautiful place that any human being has ever sat. It's a little dome, like a glass bubble, sticking out of one side of the station, and it has 7 windows, 1 circle in the middle and 6 around the outside. And from inside it, you can see in almost every direction at once. And what you see is the Earth, just hanging there. Huge and curved and impossibly blue and white. The oceans spread out like something painted, and the clouds drift in long, slow swirls. And when you pass over the land, you can see the wrinkled brown of mountains, and the deep green of forests, and the pale flat tan of deserts. And sometimes at night, you can see the glittering lights of cities, laid out like scattered jewels. And you can watch lightning storms from above. Great silent bursts of light flickering in the clouds far below, like a thought. The astronauts who've been up there say that looking down at the Earth from the cupola is the thing they will never forget for the rest of their lives. They say it makes them feel very small and very large at the same time. Small because there they are, 6 people in a tin tube, weightless and fragile. large because they can see the whole world in one glance. And sometimes, when it's very still and quiet and they're just sitting there, floating gently, the world turning slowly below them, they say they feel a kind of peace that's very hard to describe. Like everything is exactly as it should be. Perhaps, if you close your eyes right now and imagine it, the soft dark of space, the bright curve of the earth far below, the gentle hum of the station all around you, and no weight at all, nothing heavy, nothing pressing, just floating, floating. Perhaps you can feel just a tiny edge of that feeling. That soft, still peace. Let's wander a little further through the station, shall we? Just drift along. The rooms connect to each other through hatches, round doorways that you float through rather than step through. Each room has its own purpose. There's the lab. There's the room where the exercise machines are. There's the area where the astronauts eat together, which is the social heart of the station, the place where everyone gathers and talks and shares a meal in the warmest, most ordinary sort of way, even though they're floating, even though they're in space. The kitchenette has straps to hold things down, and a little table with more straps, and the astronauts eat their pouches of food, holding them very gently, dabbing up any drips before they escape and drift away. Sometimes they'll have a meal that reminds them of home. Someone's mother's recipe, sent up specially, prepared and sealed before launch. And they'll eat it very slowly in the quiet of the station, thinking of home, which is only 400 kilometers below them, which sounds close until you remember there's absolutely nothing between you and it except silence. Getting clean on the space station is another one of those things that requires a little creativity. There is no shower. There couldn't be, because without gravity, the water wouldn't fall. It would just float away in droplets, spraying everywhere, getting into everything, which would be quite unpleasant and also rather dangerous near all the electrical equipment. Instead, astronauts wash with damp cloths and special soaps that don't need rinsing off. They wipe down carefully, methodically, and it works well enough, even if it's not quite the same as a long, warm, gentle shower at the end of a good day. Washing hair is done with a special shampoo that doesn't need water to rinse it out. You put it in, you scrub, you towel it off, and it's done. The water that you used for washing floats away in little drops and then slowly evaporates and eventually makes its way through the air filtration system and becomes part of the water supply again. Around and around. Brushing teeth is almost like at home. Almost. There's toothpaste and there's a toothbrush, and you brush in the usual way. The only difference is that there's nowhere to spit. So the astronauts use a very small amount of toothpaste and then they swallow it. This sounds strange, but the space agency makes sure the toothpaste is perfectly safe to swallow, and the astronauts do it every day without any trouble whatsoever, and it has become so normal to them that they forget it's unusual at all. Sometimes, some of the astronauts have to go outside. This is called a spacewalk, and it is perhaps the most extraordinary thing that any human being can do. They put on a spacesuit, which is really a very small spacecraft that you wear, keeping you warm and giving you air and protecting you from the freezing cold of space, which is much colder than anywhere on Earth. Cold in a way that is hard to even imagine. They put on the suit very carefully, layer by layer, checking everything twice and 3 times, because outside there is no margin for error, no room for mistakes, and they take it very seriously indeed. And then they float outside. Into nothing. Above the whole world. Moving at 28,000 kilometers an hour, which is so fast, it would take you from one end of the country to the other in about 4 seconds. And yet, because everything around you is moving at exactly the same speed, you feel completely, perfectly, absolutely still. And it is silent. Truly silent, in a way that nothing on Earth is ever silent. No wind, no rustling, no distant traffic or bird or hum of electricity. Just the sound of your own breathing and your own heartbeat and the slight static of your radio and the faint voice of your crewmate also floating nearby, both of you out there together in the dark. The astronauts say a spacewalk is the most deeply peaceful thing they have ever experienced, and also the most humbling. Because out there, with nothing around you and the whole Earth curved below you and space stretching away forever in every direction, you understand in your body, not just in your mind, how small we all are. And somehow, that makes everything feel very gentle and very beautiful and very safe. Now, back inside. Come on, float back through the hatch. You must be getting sleepy. We've been floating through the station for quite a while now, and we should talk about the evenings, and about sleep, and about coming home. In the evenings, after the work is done and the experiments are checked and the equipment is tucked away, the astronauts have a little time to themselves. Some of them read. There are e-books, and the station has an internet connection, so they can watch films or television or talk to their families back on Earth. The conversations with home are one of the most important parts of the day. The faces of children and parents and friends on a screen, floating in space, being sent from orbit to the ground and back again. Saying hello. Saying goodnight. Saying nothing in particular, just being together even across all that impossible distance. Some astronauts like to look out the window in the evening, just sit quietly in the cupola and watch the world go by. Another sunrise, another sunset, the thin, bright line of the atmosphere glowing orange and gold along the edge of the Earth. It looks like the Earth is on fire, gently and beautifully, just at the edges. Some astronauts write. They keep journals, or they take photographs. They take so many photographs, thousands and thousands, trying to capture every beautiful thing they see, trying to bring it all home with them. And then, when it's time to sleep, true sleep, the long sleep of the night, shift. They float back to their little pods and climb into their sleeping bags and zip themselves up. And the station hums. And the earth turns below. And they float there, weightless, suspended, held by nothing, like a thought between waking and sleeping, like something between here and there. The station circles the earth 16 times while they sleep. By the time they wake up, they will have passed over every ocean, every continent, every desert and mountain and city 16 whole times. And they will have seen none of it, because they were sleeping. They will have been everywhere and seen nothing, which is the particular magic of sleep. Can you imagine sleeping your way around the whole world? Most astronauts stay on the station for about 6 months. 6 months of floating, of humming, of 16 sunrises a day, of recycled water and tortilla burritos and spacewalks and looking at the Earth from that beautiful glass bubble. And then, one day, they say goodbye. They climb into their small return capsule. A tiny little pod, barely big enough for a few people. And they undock from the station and fall very slowly and then very fast back through the atmosphere. And there's fire and shaking and enormous loud noise after all that silence. And then suddenly, there are parachutes. And they're drifting down, 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 slowing. And then the thump of landing. And then someone opens the hatch, and in comes air. Real air, full of the smell of grass and wind and all the things you never notice about air until you've been without them. And then comes the weight. The weight coming back, pressing down gently on their chests, pulling them down onto the earth. Their bodies, which have forgotten what heavy feels like, remembering again. Astronauts who come home say the first thing they notice is how everything smells. After 6 months of recycled, filtered, perfectly clean station air, the Earth smells extraordinary. Like life itself. Like rain on soil and flowers and something cooking somewhere, and animals and wind. They have to be helped out of the capsule and into chairs, because their muscles and bones need time to remember their jobs. They sit in the sunlight, blinking in the brightness, feeling heavy and miraculous and home. And the first meal they ask for is almost always something very simple. Something real. something their mother used to make, or something they've been craving for 6 months. And they eat it slowly, feeling the weight of the fork, the texture of real bread, the crunch of something that makes crumbs. Beautiful, wonderful, mess-making crumbs that fall down onto a plate, obeying gravity, exactly as they should. Now, I wonder if you've been floating along with the story, drifting through the station with me, peering into the sleep pods and looking out through the cupola and watching the earth turn below. I wonder if your breathing has slowed a little, and your arms have grown heavy, and your thoughts have started to go soft at the edges, like clouds. That's all right. That's exactly right. The astronauts are sleeping up there right now, you know. Right now, while you lie in your bed, there are people floating in their sleeping bags, weightless, circling the earth in the dark. 6 sunrises while you sleep. 6 times over every ocean, every mountain, every sleeping city. And somewhere in one of those sleeping cities, right now, someone else is looking up at the sky and seeing a little moving light drifting quietly across the stars, steady and soft and slow. That's them. That's the station. And they don't know you're watching, and you don't know they're floating, and yet there you both are, connected by that one small light in the dark. Isn't that something? Isn't that the loveliest, quietest sort of something? So let your eyes go soft now. Let your thoughts drift the way a pencil drifts in zero gravity, slowly, gently, going nowhere in particular. Let the hum of the station carry you, that low, steady, everything is all right hum. Let yourself float. Just a little. There's no weight tonight. Nothing heavy, nothing to hold you down, just the dark and the stars and the slow turning of the earth. Just your breath, soft and regular and slow. In and out and in. And somewhere far above you, in a little glowing station floating through the silence, someone is sleeping just like you. Weightless. Peaceful. Held by nothing at all. Good night.